April 15th, 2024. Three children went to sleep believing their mother would be there when they woke up. She wasn't. For 5 days, 8-year-old Destiny became a mother to her twin 4-year-old brothers, Marcus and Malik, while their real mother, Keisha Williams, sipped champagne in the City of Light with a boy young enough to be her little brother. But this isn't just another story of maternal neglect. What happened in that Atlanta apartment would expose a web of lies so twisted, it would destroy two families forever. While Keisha posed for Instagram photos at the Eiffel Tower, her children were rationing cereal and praying for her return. The designer bags she flaunted were bought with stolen money. The luxury hotel suite was paid for with fraudulent credit cards. The young man showering her with gifts? He was already married, with victims across 3 states. How does a mother choose Instagram likes over her children's lives? How does a 20-year-old boy manipulate a grown woman into abandoning everything? And when the truth finally came out, why did an entire community realize they had seen the signs, but done nothing? Welcome to True Crime Story HQ, where the most shocking stories are the ones that are real. Her name was Keisha Denise Williams, 28 years old, a woman who had been running from her past since she was 12. Born in East Atlanta to a teenage mother who battled addiction, Keisha learned early that love was conditional and survival required performance. When her mother overdosed from a tainted batch of heroin, young Keisha was sent to live with her grandmother, Evelyn Big Mama Johnson. Big Mama was a pillar of Mount Calvary Baptist Church, a woman who believed in hard work, education, and the power of prayer. She enrolled Keisha in the church choir, where her voice soared above the congregation every Sunday morning. Teachers praised her intelligence, classmates envied her natural beauty, and everyone expected great things from the girl who had overcome such tragedy. Keisha excelled academically, maintaining honor roll status throughout high school while working part-time at Big Mama's hair salon. She was accepted to Spelman College on a full academic scholarship, the first in her family to attend a historically black college. Big Mama cried tears of joy at graduation, believing the cycle of struggle had finally been broken. But college brought new pressures Keisha wasn't prepared for. Surrounded by girls from 2-parent households with trust funds and summer homes, she felt the familiar sting of not belonging. She started lying about her background, claiming her parents were doctors who died in a car accident. The lies came easily, naturally, like a second skin she could slip into whenever reality felt too heavy. Junior year changed everything. A night of partying led to an unplanned pregnancy with a basketball player who disappeared the moment she told him. Shame overwhelmed her as she watched her scholarship dreams crumble. She dropped out, moved back to Atlanta, and gave birth to Destiny, while Big Mama whispered prayers of disappointment and hope. The next 8 years became a cycle of broken promises and failed relationships. Marcus came from a brief relationship with a mechanic who moved to California. Malik's father was a married man who denied paternity until a court-ordered DNA test proved otherwise. 3 children, 3 different fathers, 3 different sources of inconsistent child support that barely covered diapers. Keisha worked from home braiding hair, a skill Big Mama had taught her as a teenager. The money was decent but unpredictable, depending on clients who often canceled last minute or paid late. Government assistance helped with groceries and utilities, but it was never enough to match the lifestyle she craved, the life she felt she deserved. Social media became her escape and her obsession. She studied Instagram influencers religiously, analyzing their poses, their captions, their carefully curated lives. She learned to photograph knockoff designer bags in perfect lighting, making them look authentic. She borrowed jewelry from clients for photo shoots, returning it after capturing the perfect shot. Her Instagram account, at Keisha Lives Lux, grew to 150,000 followers who believed she was a successful entrepreneur. She posted motivational quotes about self-made success while hiding eviction notices behind ring lights. She flaunted rented luxury cars during brief test drives, creating the illusion of wealth while her electricity got shut off for non-payment. The church community watched with mixed emotions. Some admired her apparent success. Others whispered about her priorities. Big Mama worried constantly, seeing through the facade but unsure how to reach the granddaughter who had become a stranger. The weight of being a strong black woman who could handle everything alone was crushing Keisha, but admitting struggle felt like admitting failure. She told herself she was building a brand, creating opportunities for her children's future. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was recreating the same fantasy world she had built in college, where reality was too painful to face, and lies felt safer than truth. The pressure of maintaining the illusion while struggling to survive was breaking her. Every bill collector's call, every empty refrigerator, every night she fell asleep to her children's questions about why Daddy wasn't coming home, pushed her further into the fantasy. She convinced herself that if she could just break through, just find the right opportunity, everything would change. She was already looking for an escape when Jalen Thompson slid into her direct messages. She just didn't know she was walking into a trap that would cost her everything she actually had while chasing everything she thought she wanted. Destiny Williams carried herself like a woman trapped in an 8-year-old's body. While other children her age worried about code playground games and cartoon shows, Destiny had learned to read eviction notices and stretch a box of cereal across 3 days. She was the bridge between her mother's chaos and her brother's innocence, a role she never asked for but accepted with the quiet strength of someone who had no choice. At school, she was a star student, consistently making honor roll despite the turmoil at home. Teachers praised her maturity and responsibility, never knowing she had packed her brother's lunches before dawn or helped them brush their teeth, while their mothers slept off another late night. When classmates asked about the bruises on her arms from lifting Marcus when he had tantrums, she would smile and lie about falling off her bike. Destiny dreamed of becoming a doctor, inspired by the pediatrician who had been kind to her during a hospital visit when Malik had pneumonia. She kept a journal hidden under her mattress where she wrote about her future plans, her college dreams, and her promise to break the cycle that had trapped her family for generations. In quiet moments, she would whisper prayers that sounded more like negotiations with God. Marcus and Malik, the 4-year-old twins, were as different as night and day despite sharing the same birthday. Marcus had inherited his mother's expressive brown eyes and quick temper, often acting out when he felt ignored or confused. He would throw tantrums that lasted for hours, screaming for a daddy he had never met, while Keisha locked herself in the bathroom to escape the noise. Malik was quieter, more observant, with his absent father's lighter complexion and thoughtful demeanor. He had developed a speech delay that worried his preschool teachers, but therapy sessions were expensive and inconsistent. He communicated more through gestures and drawings, creating pictures of stick-figure families that always included a daddy figure, even though he had never had one. Both boys had learned to cling to Destiny more than their mother. When nightmares struck, they crawled into her twin bed instead of seeking comfort from Keisha. When they were hungry, they asked their sister for snacks. When they needed their shoes tied or their faces wiped, Destiny was their first choice. The apartment they shared was a study in controlled chaos. Toys mixed with unpaid bills, children's artwork covered notices from a housing authority, and the refrigerator held more condiments than actual food. The boys had learned not to ask for things they wanted, understanding instinctively that money was always tight and their mother's mood was always fragile. They loved their mother fiercely, the way children do, but they had also learned to survive without her constant presence. They just never imagined they would have to survive without her completely. Jalen Marcus Thompson was 20 years old with the confidence of a man twice his age and the morals of someone half his maturity. Born into a middle-class black family in Decatur, he had every advantage Keisha never had: 2 loving parents, a stable home, and opportunities that most kids in Atlanta could only dream about. His father, Deacon Robert Thompson, worked as an insurance adjuster while his mother, Patricia, taught 3rd grade at a local elementary school. The Thompsons were respected in their community, the kind of family that hosted church dinners and volunteered at food drives. They had sacrificed to send Jalen to private school, then celebrated when he received a partial scholarship to Morehouse College. But their golden boy had other plans that didn't involve textbooks or lecture halls. Jalen discovered he had a gift for reading people, particularly women who were lonely, desperate, or searching for something missing in their lives. He studied their social media profiles like a predator studying prey, learning their weaknesses, their dreams, their vulnerabilities. He dropped out of Morehouse during his sophomore year, telling his parents he was taking a gap year to start a business. The business was fraud, but Jalen called it entrepreneurship. He started with small romance scams, creating fake profiles on dating apps to target middle-aged women going through divorces. He would spend weeks building emotional connections, then create emergencies that required money transfers. A sick grandmother, a car accident, a business opportunity that needed quick funding. The stories changed, but the results were always the same. By the time he turned 20, Jalen had perfected his craft. He specialized in targeting single mothers on Instagram, women who posted about their struggles while desperately trying to project success. He could spot the signs from a mile away, the designer knockoffs, the motivational quotes that masked depression, the children who appeared in photos but were clearly an afterthought to the lifestyle brand. His approach was methodical and calculated. He would study a target for weeks before making contact, learning her posting patterns, her interests, her insecurities. The initial message was always business-related, a collaboration opportunity or investment proposal that seemed legitimate. Once he had their attention, he would slowly shift into personal territory, complimenting their beauty, their strength, their independence. Jalen had already scammed 12 women across 3 states, accumulating over $2 million in fraudulent charges. He lived in luxury apartments paid for with stolen identities, drove cars purchased with fake credit applications, and maintained multiple bank accounts under various names. To his parents, he was a successful young entrepreneur. To law enforcement, he was a ghost they couldn't catch. When he discovered Keisha's Instagram account, he knew immediately she would be his biggest score yet. March 28, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Keisha's phone buzzed with a direct message that would change everything. Jalen had been sliding into her DMs for 3 weeks, starting with business proposals about brand partnerships and investment opportunities. Tonight's message was different, more personal, more urgent. Pack light, we're going to Paris. Tonight, I've got everything handled. Just bring yourself and that beautiful smile. The message included a screenshot of 2 first-class tickets departing Atlanta at 6:30 a.m., destination Charles de Gaulle Airport. Keisha stared at her phone screen, heart racing, hands trembling with excitement and disbelief. She had been chatting with Jalen for weeks, falling deeper into his web of charm and false promises. He claimed to be a successful cryptocurrency investor who had made millions before his 21st birthday. The photos he sent showed stacks of cash, luxury cars, and expensive watches. He had been love-bombing her with compliments, telling her she deserved the world, and he wanted to give it to her. 30 seconds of hesitation, that's all it took. 30 seconds to weigh her responsibilities against her desires, her children's needs against her own wants. The decision was made before she even realized she was making it. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced speed, typing the words that would seal her fate and destroy her family. "When do we leave?" she typed back, already mentally packing her best outfits and planning her Instagram captions. This was her chance, her opportunity to finally live the life she had been pretending to have online. Paris, the city of love and luxury, with a man who seemed too good to be true but felt like destiny. Jalen's response was immediate, as if he had been waiting for her answer. "Car picks you up at 4 a.m. Don't overthink it, beautiful. You deserve this." He sent another message with hotel confirmation details, restaurant reservations, and a shopping itinerary that made her head spin with possibilities. Keisha crept through her apartment, careful not to wake the children, who were sleeping peacefully in their shared bedroom. Destiny had her arms wrapped protectively around both twins, even in sleep maintaining her role as their guardian. For a brief moment, guilt flickered through Keisha's mind as she watched her daughter's peaceful face. She pushed the feeling away, convincing herself this trip was actually for them. If she could secure this relationship with Jalen, if she could access his wealth and connections, she could finally provide the life her children deserved. This wasn't abandonment, it was investment in their future. Moving quickly and quietly, she packed her best clothes, her favorite wigs, and her most expensive makeup. She left $40 on the kitchen counter next to a box of cereal and a gallon of milk that was already half empty. In her mind, this would be enough for 2 days, maybe 3 at most. She scribbled a quick note on the back of an envelope. Mommy's handling business. Destiny, you're in charge. Be good. Love you. She placed it next to the money, grabbed her suitcase, and headed for the door without looking back. At 4 a.m. exactly, a black sedan pulled up outside her apartment complex. Keisha took one last glance at the building that held her sleeping children, then climbed into the car that would take her away from everything that mattered. April 15th, 2024, 7:30 a.m. Paris time. Keisha stepped off the Air France flight into a world she had only seen in movies and Instagram posts. The Charles de Gaulle Airport felt like a palace compared to Hartsfield-Jackson, with its soaring glass ceilings and elegant French announcements echoing through marble corridors. Jalen waited for her at customs, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He greeted her with a kiss that felt like a movie scene, spinning her around while other passengers smiled at what appeared to be a romantic reunion. A private driver in a crisp uniform held a sign with her name, leading them to a black Mercedes that smelled like leather and expensive cologne. As they drove through the streets of Paris, Keisha pressed her face to the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. The Hotel Ritz Paris stood before them like a golden palace, its facade gleaming in the morning sun. Doormen in elaborate uniforms opened their car doors with practiced precision. The lobby took Keisha's breath away, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across marble floors, fresh flowers arranged in displays that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Their suite overlooked the Place Vendôme, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Eiffel Tower in the distance. Champagne waited on ice, along with a bouquet of white roses and a handwritten note from the hotel manager welcoming them to Paris. Keisha spun around the room, taking in the silk curtains, the antique furniture, the bathroom that was larger than her entire bedroom back home. She immediately began documenting everything for Instagram. The champagne flute against the window, her reflection in the ornate mirror, the view from their balcony with the caption, "Dreams do come true, #blessed, #Parisbound, #living my best life." The likes and comments poured in within minutes, friends and followers expressing envy and admiration for a seemingly perfect life. Day 1 blurred into a whirlwind of luxury experiences. Jalen took her shopping on the Champs-Élysées, where he handed her his Black American Express card and told her to buy whatever made her happy. She walked into Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and Hermes like she belonged there, selecting handbags and shoes that cost more than most people's cars. The sales associates treated her like royalty, bringing champagne while she tried on different outfits. She purchased a Birkin bag that cost $35,000, a decision that took her less than 30 seconds. Every purchase was documented for social media, each photo carefully staged to show her living the ultimate luxury lifestyle. That evening, they dined at Le Muris, a Michelin-starred restaurant where the waiters spoke in hushed French and the wine list read like a novel. Keisha had never tasted food so exquisite, each course a work of art that she photographed before eating. Jalen ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, a 1990 Chateau Petrus that cost $8,000. Day 2 brought a private tour of the Louvre, where they had exclusive access to sections closed to the public. Keisha posed in front of the Mona Lisa, the Venus de Milo, and countless other masterpieces, creating content that would make her followers believe she was living a fairy tale. They had lunch at a private club where celebrities and billionaires dined in secrecy. But by day 3, subtle changes began to appear in Jalen's behavior. His credit cards started getting declined at high-end boutiques, forcing him to switch between different cards with increasing frequency. His phone rang constantly with calls he would step away to take, his voice becoming tense and urgent during these conversations. Keisha noticed, but chose to ignore the warning signs, too intoxicated by the lifestyle to question its sustainability. When his card was declined at Cartier while she was selecting a diamond bracelet, he laughed it off as a bank security issue and promised to handle it later. She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, because the alternative meant facing reality. Day 4 revealed cracks in the perfect facade. Jalen became increasingly agitated, spending more time on his phone than with her. He snapped at hotel staff, complained about service that seemed flawless to Keisha, and began drinking heavily during their meals. When she asked what was wrong, He deflected with kisses and promises that everything was fine. That evening, during dinner at another expensive restaurant, Jalen received a phone call that changed everything. He stepped away from the table, and Keisha could see through the window as his face transformed from confident to panicked. When he returned, his hands were shaking and his usual charm had evaporated. "We need to talk," he said, his voice lacking the warmth that had drawn her in. Back in their hotel suite, the truth began to unravel. The credit cards were stolen, the money was fraudulent, and the lifestyle was built on lies. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. "I'm married," Jalen said, the words hitting Keisha like a physical blow. "This was never real. You were just another mark, another score." He showed her photos on his phone of a young woman with a baby, his real family back in Atlanta. Day 5 brought the final collapse. Hotel management confronted them about unpaid bills. Jalen's remaining cards were all declined, and he disappeared during the night, leaving Keisha stranded in a foreign country with no money and no way home. April 15th, 2024, 6 a.m. Atlanta time. Destiny Williams woke up to silence, the kind of unnatural quiet that made her stomach twist with worry. She had learned to read the sounds of their apartment like a survival guide, distinguishing between her mother's restless sleep and complete absence. This morning felt different, empty in a way that made her 8-year-old heart race with panic. She crept to her mother's bedroom, finding the bed unslept in and a hastily scribbled note on crumpled paper. "Mommy's handling business. Destiny, you're in charge. Be good. Love you." $40 sat next to a box of generic cereal and half a gallon of milk that would expire in 2 days. Destiny stared at the money, understanding immediately that she was now responsible for keeping her family alive. Marcus and Malik woke up asking for their mother, their 4-year-old voices echoing through the apartment with increasing desperation. Destiny forced a smile, telling them Mommy had gone to work early and would be back soon. She poured cereal into plastic bowls, carefully measuring portions to make the box last longer, adding just enough milk to make it edible while preserving what little they had. Day 1 passed in a haze of responsibility that no child should bear. Destiny walked her brothers to preschool, lying to teachers about why their mother wasn't available for pickup. She forged her mother's signature on permission slips, answered phone calls with a voice she tried to make sound adult, and rationed their food like a war survivor. Mrs. Johnson, their elderly neighbor, noticed the unusual quiet from the apartment. Normally, she could hear Keisha's music, her phone conversations, the general chaos of a single mother managing 3 children. The silence felt ominous, but she convinced herself it wasn't her business to interfere in other people's lives. Day 2 brought new challenges as their food supply dwindled faster than Destiny had calculated. The twins were growing irritable from hunger, their usual energy replaced by listless whining. Destiny tried to stretch their meals by adding water to the cereal, creating a thin gruel that barely satisfied their empty stomachs. She attempted to buy groceries at the corner store, standing on her tiptoes to reach the counter while the cashier looked at her with suspicion. "Where's your mama, baby?" the woman asked, refusing to sell food to an unaccompanied child. Destiny walked home empty-handed, her pride wounded and her options shrinking. The apartment began to smell of unchanged diapers and unwashed bodies. Destiny did her best to maintain cleanliness, but without proper supplies and adult supervision, basic hygiene became increasingly difficult. She gave her brothers baths in lukewarm water, using dish soap when the baby shampoo ran out. Day 3 marked a turning point as desperation set in. The cereal box was nearly empty, the milk had soured, and the twins were crying constantly from hunger and confusion. Destiny found herself praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening, begging for her mother's return or for someone, anyone, to help them. Mrs. Johnson's concern deepened when she realized she hadn't seen Keisha in days. The crying from the apartment had become constant, punctuated by periods of eerie silence that worried her more than the noise. She stood outside their door several times, hand raised to knock, but each time she talked herself out of interfering. Day 4 brought physical symptoms of neglect that Destiny couldn't ignore. Malik had developed a rash from his unchanged diaper. Marcus was running a low fever, and Destiny herself felt weak and dizzy from hunger. She tried calling her mother's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail each time. The 8-year-old girl made a decision that would haunt her for years. She called Big Mama's number, the only other adult contact she knew by heart. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. Big Mama was at her weekly church meeting and had left her phone at home. Destiny left a broken message, her voice cracking with desperation. Day 5 arrived with the sound of sirens in the distance, though not yet for them. Destiny had collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition, her small body finally succumbing to the impossible burden she had been carrying. Marcus and Malik huddled around their sister, too young to understand the gravity of their situation, but old enough to know something was terribly wrong. Mrs. Johnson finally made the call that would change everything. The constant crying had stopped, replaced by a silence that felt like death itself. Her hand shook as she dialed 911, her voice breaking as she explained the situation to the operator. "I think there are children alone in the apartment next door. I haven't seen their mother in days, and the crying just stopped. Please send someone quickly." The operator's voice was calm and professional, but Mrs. Johnson could hear the urgency building as she provided the address and apartment number. Within minutes, Atlanta Police Department units were racing through the streets toward an apartment where 3 children waited for a rescue that was almost too late. April 20th, 2024, 11 a.m. Atlanta Police Department. Detective Maria Santos stared at the case file that would haunt her for years to come. 3 children hospitalized for severe dehydration and malnutrition while their mother partied in Paris with a known fraudster. The investigation required immediate international coordination between Atlanta PD, FBI, and French authorities. Within hours, they had traced Keisha's location through her credit card usage and social media posts. Her Instagram account became evidence, each glamorous photo time-stamped and geotagged, creating a digital trail of abandonment. The contrast was devastating. Designer shopping sprees documented while her children starved 3,000 miles away. FBI agent Marcus Thompson, ironically sharing the same last name as the perpetrator, coordinated with Interpol to track Jalen's criminal network. They discovered he had been operating across multiple states, targeting vulnerable single mothers through elaborate romance scams. His real name was Jalen Marcus Thompson, and he was already wanted on federal fraud charges totaling over $2 million. The breakthrough came when French police located Keisha at Charles de Gaulle Airport, attempting to board a standby flight back to Atlanta. She had been abandoned by Jalen after his credit cards were frozen by international banking authorities. Security footage showed her crying in the terminal, making desperate phone calls to numbers that no longer answered. Her arrest was swift and without drama. When French officers approached her at Gate 47, she collapsed in relief rather than resistance. "My babies," she kept repeating. "I need to get back to my babies." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present that she was finally thinking about her children only after being caught. Jalen was captured 3 days later in Miami Beach, already grooming his next victim, a divorced teacher with 2 young sons. FBI agents found him at the Fontainebleau Hotel, living under a false identity with stolen credit cards and fake documentation. His arrest made national news, exposing a fraud ring that had victimized dozens of women across the southeastern United States. The extradition process moved quickly, both suspects waiving their rights to fight deportation. They would face justice in Atlanta, where their crimes had left 3 innocent children fighting for their lives in Grady Hospital's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. September 12, 2024, Fulton County Superior Court. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds gathering outside to witness the trial that had captivated Atlanta's black community. Keisha Williams sat at the defendant's table wearing a plain orange jumpsuit, her once perfect Instagram image replaced by the harsh reality of incarceration. Gone were the designer wigs and flawless makeup, revealing a broken woman who looked decades older than her 28 years. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Patricia Coleman, presented a case that was both legally airtight and emotionally devastating. They displayed blown-up Instagram photos of Keisha's Paris vacation alongside hospital records showing her children's near-death condition. The contrast was so stark that several jury members visibly recoiled when the evidence was presented. "Ladies and gentlemen," D.A. Coleman addressed the jury with controlled fury. While this defendant sipped champagne at the Ritz Paris, her 8-year-old daughter was rationing cereal to keep her baby brothers alive. While she posed for selfies at the Eiffel Tower, those same children were drinking water from the bathroom faucet because they had nothing else. The defense attorney, Marcus Williams, no relation to the defendant, attempted to paint Keisha as a victim of manipulation and mental illness. He argued that postpartum depression, combined with Jalen's sophisticated psychological manipulation, had impaired her judgment. "My client was preyed upon by a master manipulator who exploited her vulnerabilities and mental health struggles." The most devastating testimony came from 8-year-old Destiny herself, speaking via closed-circuit television to protect her from courtroom trauma. Her small voice echoed through the silent courtroom as she described caring for her brothers, rationing food, and praying for her mother's return. "I thought maybe Mommy was dead," she whispered, "because I couldn't think of any other reason she wouldn't come back to us." Big Mama's testimony brought the courtroom to tears as she described finding her great-grandchildren in the hospital, barely clinging to life. "I failed that child when she was young, and she failed those babies when they needed her most. But those children didn't deserve to pay for our failures with their lives." The community reaction was swift and unforgiving. Mount Calvary Baptist Church, where Keisha had once sung in the choir, held prayer vigils for the children while publicly condemning their mother's actions. Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForDestiny and #ProtectOurChildren, with thousands sharing their outrage and support for the surviving children. After 3 days of testimony and only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Keisha Williams was found guilty on all charges: 3 counts of child abandonment, 3 counts of child endangerment, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud. The courtroom erupted in applause as the verdict was read, while Keisha collapsed in her chair, finally understanding the full weight of her choices. October 5, 2024, Sentencing Day. Judge Patricia Williams, no relation to the defendant, delivered a sentence that would echo through Atlanta's legal system for years. "Keisha Williams, you are sentenced to 15 years in state prison without possibility of parole for 10 years. Your children will grow up knowing their mother chose Instagram likes over their lives." The children found healing in Big Mama's steady hands and the community's overwhelming support. Destiny, now 9, continued excelling in school while attending therapy twice weekly. Marcus and Malik, though still dealing with developmental delays from their trauma, slowly began to trust again. Mount Calvary Baptist Church established a fund for their education, raising over $200,000 in 6 months. Jalen Thompson received 25 years in federal prison for his elaborate fraud scheme that had victimized 37 women across 8 states. His parents, devastated by their son's crimes, sold their home to help compensate his victims. The case led to new federal legislation requiring stricter monitoring of romance scam operations on social media platforms. But the story's most shocking twist came 3 months into Keisha's sentence. During a routine medical examination at Georgia Women's Correctional Institution, doctors discovered she was 12 weeks pregnant. DNA testing confirmed what everyone suspected. Jalen Thompson was the father, conceived during their Paris trip, while her children starved at home. Keisha gave birth to a healthy baby girl on March 15, 2025, exactly 1 year after abandoning her other children. In a decision that surprised everyone, she immediately signed adoption papers, placing the infant with Dr. Sarah and Michael Chen, the wealthy pediatrician couple whose lifestyle she had once envied on Instagram. The final irony was complete. The woman who had abandoned 3 children chasing a fantasy life had given her 4th child to the very people living the reality she had desperately sought. Sometimes the universe delivers justice in ways no courtroom ever could. What do you think? Could you ever abandon your children for 5 days? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature.